Good evening and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Real Life, Real Tarot. And today we're going to explore a case scenario. And the reason why I do case scenarios is because when I offer free readings, chances are I get very specific questions, but I get the same kind of questions over and over again. And I want to use the tarot to explore questions that I don't often get. So today's case scenario basically is the short of it. I found romantic text messages on my wife's phone with her personal trainer. She says it's just friendly banter. Now, obviously I'm not talking about my wife because I don't have one, but this is a valid question to ask the tarot. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do a 5-card reading to explore what's going on and answer a question. So let's have a look at some of the detail that the case presents with us or to us. Finding those romantic text messages on my wife's phone felt like a physical blow, yet she insists it's nothing more than harmless, friendly banter with her trainer. I'm trapped in a dizzying crossroads where my gut is screaming betrayal, while she minimizes my pain, leaving me to wonder if I'm being gaslit or if I'm truly overreacting. This crisis of trust has me questioning the very integrity of our connection, and I'm terrified that the woman I love is slipping away behind a screen of deception. I need the cards to help me cut through this fog of confusion so I can find a path to clarity and decide if our foundation is still strong enough to hold us. What a great scenario to work with. Pretty terrible for our querent, but nonetheless, they've come to us and they want to know what to do next. So the question they've asked us is, how can I approach this conversation with my wife in a way that prioritizes the truth over defensive arguments? Okay. So the spread that I'm going to do is a 5-card one, and it's meant to look at a relationship overview as to what's really the strengths, the challenges, perhaps the relationship requires if it's meant to be preserved, and then have a look at whether those cards can provide any insight into the question our reader is, the querent is asking of us. So, yeah. Now, I want to also bear in mind that, and I'll likely say this in future readings, it's not necessarily our place as tarot card readers to judge what our querents are going through. People can come through with all sorts of questions and all sorts of ethical dilemmas, and sometimes you might find yourself in a position where you feel compromised, but ultimately, they're here for a reason. And for this particular one, I empathize with both, well, particularly the reader, because it's not a great situation to be in. Okay, let's have a look at what we can do. If you're curious as to what this deck is called, it's called True Black. And it's one of my earlier decks that I funded on Kickstarter. And I absolutely love it. It is truly gorgeous, and I hope that the beauty of it translates into the video. The current energy of the relationship. Key strength of the relationship. Key challenge of the relationship. Something the relationship requires. Future possibility of the relationship. Quick camera check to see if all cards are in view, and they are. Alright, so let's have a look and see what we can find. Now, the first card we see in the card energy position is the Chariot. The Chariot reversed, to be precise. And what this card typically depicts, chariots typically depict the act of moving forward with your will. Chariots have a lot of furious energy, passionate energy, and enthusiasm for a future that they just drive towards. They're keen, they're eager, they're hungry, and they have that go, go, go energy embodied within them. So you can only imagine what it means when the card is reversed. And so what we kind of see is the energy of the relationship is that there seems to be a stalling. It's not going forward. It may be going backward, but I kind of sense from the position of the card that the energy of his Aquarius relationship is that the relationship simply is moving forward. Who is to blame? Is there anyone to blame? It's unclear. But the vibe and the feel of the relationship is that it seems to be at a standstill, and this doesn't seem to be necessarily a future because the will and drive to actually push it coming from both our people doesn't seem to be there right now. So let's have a look at the strength of the relationships. The relationship. We see the Ten of Coins. The Ten of Coins as a card often depicts wealth. It depicts security. It depicts stability. Celebrations. And here we see basically an elephant standing on the 2 feet on top of a podium made of gold bricks. As the elephant looks up into the sky, we see 10 coins. And so this is the card that typically depicts that stability and security that the Earth cards, Earth suit often aspires to actually achieve. So what does it say when it's reversed? Well, what does it say when it's reversed and talks about the strength of the relationship? It's always a challenge to get a reversed card in a positive context because not all positive reverse cards depict positive situations. But then what we're seeing here is that this is meant to depict something positive. So how do we interpret it? I'm going to say that the strength of the relationship is that they have endured rocky positions before. They are a resilient one because it's never, they've had chaos and instability in the past. This is nothing new. And so they have managed to get through this even when things seemed unclear in the past. So what this card, I think, communicates is that sense of resilience as a key strength. So let's have a look at the weaknesses of the relationship. We have the Knight of Coins. Now that's an interesting one. Okay, now the Knight of Coins as a knight. Knights are typically restless. They're often people that are passionate. They exemplify the idea of movement and curiosity as they move forward. The Knight of Coins in particular is the slowest of all the knights. They tend to stop, take their time, read up on the facts before they make any decision. And when it's reversed, like Knights of Coins are typically very careful, they're cautious. It's not like they like to rush into battle or anything like that. They're just very cautious and they take their time to arrive at the decision that they usually make. When it's reversed, we kind of see that the worst aspects of this knight come into play. And what it kind of suggests is that that caution and that stability becomes boredom. The knight becomes a character that is boring. They just don't take initiative when they should. They tend to fall into routine and a whole lot of assumptions, taking their life and relationship for granted. And I think that's the message of this card in this context, is that a querent and likely their partner have become are trapped in a relationship where there's no excitement, there's no adventure. There's a sense of routine where things just happen, but there's no passionate romance like they might have had at some point in their life. It's become very dull. So this is something to keep in mind. So, what does a relationship require? Okay. The Knight of Coins tends to be someone that is cautious, takes the time to plan, prepare before making a decision. The Knight of Air, the Knight of Swords, is very much the opposite. The Knight of Coins is full of armor. The Knight of Air has no regard for that. They're quick, they're fast, they're decisive. Even if they make 100 million mistakes, the Knight of Air or Swords believes that it's more important to act rather than to look like you're just not fast and responsive enough. Knights of Swords are very intelligent, agile, fast, versatile. If sometimes they can be a little bit reckless. And when it's reversed, we see some of those negative qualities where perhaps, the knight is hasty, reckless, spontaneous. And so what is this saying about what the relationship requires? I think it requires the reckless spontaneity where, people actually do something and say something, even if it means hurting the other person. But what is it saying about what this relationship requires? I suspect, now swords are typically the card and suit of communication as well and making decisions. I think this knight is kind of saying that what they need to do is actually speak their mind, even if it means hurting the other person, although that shouldn't be the intention. I think one of the problems that this relationship might have had is that they've been tiptoeing around each other. They've harbored possibly a lot of resentment, and it's just they're keeping it all in. They actually need to spill the beans, and they actually need to talk about it if this relationship is going to have a chance. Yeah. The other thing is, I think this reverse echoes the problem with this one. The relationship requires a sense of spontaneity, a sense of movement and fast movement, where it hasn't been receiving much of that, and there's been a lack and an absence of communication. Yeah. So, what's the future possibility of this relationship? Well, that's very interesting. We see the moon. And the moon as a card, as a theme, often talks about unknowns, where things are obscured by the light of the moon, where there are shadows, where we don't see the full picture because, the light of the day just isn't there. The moon also can tell us that we need to listen to our intuition, that we need to actually get in touch with our, the side of us that we keep hidden from reality, from the world, and from others. And we need to actually figure out, is this relationship worth saving? What do we really want? Do we want a confrontation? Great. The question is, how can I approach this conversation with my wife in a way that prioritizes the truth over defensive arguments? What is this moon saying about the future possibility of the relationship? The first part, I think, is that it is unclear. All the facts are not on the table. There's a lot of secrets. There's a lot of things being kept from people, from each other. And I think the moon kind of says that, suggests that. The moon is always about hidden knowledge, hidden information. And I think before any decision can be made about the future, it suggests that you need to find the facts. And that means having a conversation and communicating. So, how can our querent approach this conversation with his wife? Her wife? His wife? Who cares? Okay. Um, the first thing is to acknowledge, I would say, is to acknowledge the fact that the relationship has been in a rut. It hasn't been moving forward. There's been a stalemate. The second thing is to understand and accept, I guess, that your relationship has had its series of knocks and trials before, and it has survived those. So if there's a chance of survival, you know, you've been together for a while, I'm guessing. It's yeah, you have a chance at getting through this. So if you are to have a conversation with your partner about what's going on, the first thing you might want to acknowledge is that perhaps your relationship has been in a rut, and perhaps you might have been someone who has taken the relationship for granted. There has been a lack of initiative and spontaneity on your part, and perhaps that's what she needs. That sense of flirting, that sense of romance that she might not be getting from the relationship with yourself. And maybe, I suspect she does value the stability of a relationship, but she needs something more. She needs that romance. And so you might want to ask her, what does she feel is missing from the relationship that perhaps you might not be providing? Um, the other thing to keep in mind is that there is a lot of things that are not being said. There's a lot of things that perhaps need to be said, and to be said without judgment and without overreacting. The Knight reverse kind of tells me is that if this relationship is to survive, it needs to have a space where a person can say how they feel without fear of judgment, without fear of harsh criticism. No one likes the idea of being cheated on. No one also likes the idea of cheating. So I would like to think that. I know that's not necessarily true. So perhaps your wife has reasons for why she's doing what she's doing, and for her to actually articulate that, she needs to actually feel. You need to create a space where she can actually articulate those reasons without her feeling like she's going to have you jump down her throat. Finally, this is there a future possibility of a relationship? It is very unclear. Um, this is not necessarily a negative card, but it's what it's saying is that you don't have all the facts. And in order for you to make a decision going forward, you need to find out what's going on, how she's feeling, what's missing, before you can decide whether to hold on to this or not. Yeah. Now, the thing that I should acknowledge, and for other people who are tarot card readers, you probably should have picked up on this, the vast majority of these cards are reversed. And that's never a good sign. That kind of suggests there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of things that might be out of our querent's control. And it's not necessarily looking positive, but I don't believe that's the message. It's just something to acknowledge, is that there's a lot of stuff going on that's out of our reader's control right now. But nonetheless, there are some messages for our querent, in order to act, and that is to find the facts, create a space where his wife might feel comfortable to express why she feels the need to, flirt with a personal trainer. And then finally, acknowledge that maybe you haven't been the greatest partner in the romantic department. What are you prepared to do to change that? Are you prepared to acknowledge that and confirm that if she does say yes? And if so, okay, that's great. So where do we go from here? Can you satisfy that need? And what are you willing to do so? Cool. So that's my reading. Dear viewers, do let me know what you think. If you like this reading, please don't forget to like and subscribe. But otherwise, have a lovely night, and I will see you around.